Go ahead, folks.
Morena Koto, good morning everybody. Welcome to this morning's externally funded projects committee meeting of Kaipara District Council. Today is the 20th of October and it's a beautiful day here in the middle of the Kaipara as springtime is roaring along. Sometimes we abbreviate the title of this project, of this committee, from the externally funded projects committee to the ex-fun projects, and let's just wait and see ahead for today how much fun we can have here with this and how much fun it used to be. So at this point I'm going to open this morning's meeting with a karakia. Kia horo te marino, kia whakapapu, pounamu te moana, hei hua rahi ma tātou i te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou I a tātou katoa. Kia ora. Calling at this point for apologies. We have an apology from Councillor Joyce Paki. We have an apology for lateness from Councillor de Lavaris Woodcock. And we have an apology in advance for an early departure from Councillor Wilson Collins. There are no other apologies that I'm aware of. And we have 6 of the 9 are present at today's meeting. So at this point, I'd like to move those apologies, and I'm seeking a seconder. Councillor Curnow, thank you for seconding that. So before I put it to vote, are there any comments on that? No, thank you. So we're putting this to the vote now about receiving and accepting those apologies. All those in favour, please raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Item number 1.3 is the confirmation of the agenda. Again, we have a very full agenda today, and we have a couple of new items which have entered our portfolio of externally funded projects for today. So I'd like to move the agenda as prepared, and I'm seeking a seconder for that. Councillor Wilson Collins, thank you. Is there any commentary on the agenda? No commentary, thank you. We're putting that to the vote now of adopting the agenda. All those in favour, please raise their hand, say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Item number 1.4, are there any conflicts of interest to be declared with any of these projects for today? No conflicts of interest? Great, thank you. So we'll be able to move swiftly on into the next part of the meeting. Thank you. Section number 2, item number 2.1 is the confirmation of the ex-fun minutes from the 15th of September. So I'm seeking a mover for receiving these. Councillor Curnow, thank you. And a seconder for this. Councillor Wilson Collins, thank you. Is there any commentary on the minutes? No commentary? All right. Okay, thank you. So we're putting this to the vote now for adopting these minutes. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right. Moving swiftly on to our first of our subject items for today is the Kaipara Kai Sustainability Review. We have a recommendation here that the committee notes the sustainability review document. And so I'm seeking a mover for that. Councillor Curnow, thank you. And a seconder for that. Councillor Vincent, thank you. Thank you. So that puts this onto the table for us today, and I see that Vaughan Cooper from Northern Inc. is joining us. Kia ora, Vaughan, very small there on the monitor. I'm needing a microscope to be able to see there. Very distant, great technology from Northern Inc. though. And so I'm assuming, Vaughan, that you're here to help discuss and present this item, but Joe Reid, is that correct? Am I correct there? Do we just go straight to Vaughan?
Kia ora, morning. Yes, Vaughan is joining us this morning to present the Kaipara Kai Sustainability Review. Yep. Okay,
thank you. Thank you. So we'll go direct to Vaughan now for this item. Thank you, Vaughan.
Good everybody. Thank you very much, Your Worship, and morning councillors. Interesting, I'm on the biggest screen we have in our organisation, and yet I still look really small, but that's all right. So really, I was just going to try and summarise a few things about the report, and then open the floor to some discussion, because I'm sure you've got questions on it. By way of an introduction to the report, it was designed not as an evaluation of delivery of the Kaipara Kai Hub. It was designed as how can we consider a sustainable way of delivering the Kai Hub type services going forward. I think it's quite important to just make that distinction. It was a forward focused piece of work. So it's about how we keep delivering, or what are some options where we could keep delivering the activity that was delivered through the Kaipara Kai Hub. For me, I jumped to page 18 of the report, which is the one that has the infographic that has on the left-hand side the generic advice versus the kind of soft advice. And I think that's a really neat way of summing up what this report has kind of found, is that there's a level of advice here that Kaipara Kai was offering that's really hard to monetize, but is actually really valuable. And so the challenge with this report, and what Scarlett has tried to explore for us, is, well, how could we look at some options to essentially, maybe not monetize, but how could we fund that type of activity? Because it's not the normal type of thing that a landowner would happily pay for. They'll pay for the hard or the specialist advice type stuff, which is water hydrology, soil profile, those kind of real physical, tangible things. That soft connection, listening, building a baseline of tools type advice, much harder for them to see the value in paying for it, but actually it's really useful in terms of trying to achieve the types of things we were trying to achieve through Kaipara Kai Hub. So I think that clarity was really useful in terms of what the report's done. It's then gone on to suggest, basically the summary of this report is it suggests trying to pilot monetizing that type of service in some kind of sustainable advisory delivery model going forward. So the report was getting us to a point of saying, yep, here's some options and how you could continue to do this. It hasn't delved right into the detail of those options. That's the next bit of work that we have underway at the moment. But the report has identified, I think page 55 is the conclusions around piloting whether or not we could pilot that as a sustainable advisory model where it self-generates its income and gets to a point where it self-sustains and continues. So that's kind of that's my short summary of what the report has done. As I did just mention, it didn't go into the detail of how to deliver that. That is the next piece of work. We have that next piece of work underway. We're about 3/4 of the way through that at the moment. So there'll be a follow-up report, which we'll bring to this group at some point, which is about saying, okay, we've taken the thinking of this report and we've delved into it in some detail and tried to work out what that looks like operationally. And I expect we'll be able to bring that back in another month or two. So that's my quick update. I'm happy to take questions on detail within the report.
Thank you. Councillor Curnow, question.
Yeah, just asking if Vaughan, perhaps you could delve a little bit more into what is actually being done now as a result of this report, and yeah, who's doing it and what are they doing?
Sure, thank you, Councillor Curnow. So in terms of the Kaipara Kai Hub delivery of activity that we have, there's two pieces of work left to go. So there's delivery of this sustainability review, and then we have, as I said, we have the business case that comes out of that. That's the, if you like, the thinking part of the work in terms of how we can structure the way forward. We have managed to keep, so as you know, the group of staff we had was Matt and Lana. They were the key staff delivering Kaipara Kai Hub. They left us prior to the project finishing, and we were fortunate to be able to bring on Jeanette Johnson and Greg Hall to kind of help keep delivery going. We have managed, as Northern Inc, have managed to keep Jeanette on for what was a quarter of a year, and is probably going to stretch into 6 months of a year, just to keep that service going until we can find a more permanent funding source. We have I think I've said this before, we have strong interest from Plant and Food to partner with us to keep delivering that type of activity. I haven't yet managed to get that transitioned into a contract or a money in the table, but I'm very confident we will get there. But in the meantime, we felt this activity was so important, we've found a way to keep Jeanette on the ground, essentially, for a better term.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lavaris Woodcock, Morena, and welcome to the meeting. And your question next, please, and then Councillor Wethy. Thank you.
Morena Tato, apologies for being a little late. Excellent report. Thank you very much, Vaughan. I'm interested in the Te Tai Tokoro Kai model and also the feedback from the participants in the investigation, that from the iwi groups there was quite a bit of well, the clear statement that Māori cultural awareness needed to be part of the delivery and would need to be part of the future delivery if the model is to proceed. And I'm just wondering about, but it seemed to be in the summary of options, that community well-being, sustainability, feeding themselves, kind of teaching people how to grow food, that seemed to drop off. And it seems to me that although self-funding with a kind of branding, a buy-in approach leans more towards commercially grown food, I just want to know your thoughts about how a future advisory board model would bridge that cultural gap between, you know, on the one hand, commercial operations, and on the other, community growing solutions. And if you think that's possible, or never the twain shall meet.
Yeah, good question, Councillor. I think you need to be very deliberate in the fact that you are going to try and incorporate both of those things right from the outset. I don't think it's one or the other. It is both. The Māori delivery is something our organisation has acknowledged that we need to continuously improve in, and we've made some good steps in there. And that is, for me, that's about how we support our team out on the ground to deliver that. The community wellbeing, sort of community scale stuff here, I think there's real opportunity to ensure that whatever your model you've got, it has the ability to deliver that community scale stuff. So it has to be integrated into what you're delivering.
Yes, and so my further question is about the second item on this committee meeting this morning. We have Kai water irrigation, and you know, one of our iwi partners is involved in that project too. So I was wondering, is there a link between this kind of, I know we're in a hiatus and the Kai model needs funding to go forward, but is there any link between hopefully what comes of the project that we have with water going forward with irrigation? I'm thinking of Te Roroa.
Yeah, I think there is a real natural link. The same resource here is looking after both those projects and is linking them up. I think there's a really nice synergy between those projects, and there's a really nice focus going on, and that's at Ottawa site around what we're trying to grow up there. So I think that's worked out really well.
And also, I know I probably don't mean to command the questions, but there's quite a lot of concern that Kaipara tends to get lost out because we're the smaller player when regional projects or come into being. And so even though there's a strong recommendation that the funding would be better a regional model, how would we as a district protect against disappearing or being less important because we don't have say like Kaikohe is getting berries and things going already, and Kaipara is kind of like we're coming late to the table. So how would we ensure that we wouldn't disappear?
Yeah, I have two answers to that, and these are not the only two answers, but one of them is you have natural strengths in terms of your soil and your topography and your ability to grow stuff, and don't underestimate that. That's really important. You're a natural growing environment, so things are going to occur there. And the other answer I have is there's real value and real opportunity in Kaipara District Council being a shareholder of Northlink in terms of being involved in a statement of intent and having that strategic direction around where we focus.
Thanks, Vaughan. Those are my questions asked.
Thank you. Just before we come to Councillor Wethy, I've got if you like, a supplementary question following on from one of Councillor de Lavaris Wilcox questions there, which is about the understanding. I'm trying to get here the understanding about the difference between the Kaipara Kai Project, which links with wharves and links with land and links with our community and links with the Kai Water Project, is part of the Kaipara Kai Project, and then the Kai Hub, which was an outreach tool for the Kaipara Kai Project. And so because the report, if you like, and this talks to where Councillor de Lavaris's question is, which is regarding the overall strategic direction of Kaipara District in this space, and Kaipara District Council and our community in this space, which is the Kaipara Kai Project. The Kaipara Kai Hub was the chosen delivery approach, which lasted for one brief shining moment, but the Kaipara Kai Project carries on. And the report here at the beginning of the executive summary starts out by talking about the Kaipara Kai Project and then loses its way and goes into just a piece, which is about the Kai Hub. But the actual strategic work that we're doing still carries on, which is why this committee continues to work regarding the Kai Water Project and other parts. So this is not a repeat of Councillor de Lavaris's question, but how do we get that joined up here? Because there seems to me to be a disconnect in the thinking, and I'm just keen to see how that aligns.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure if there is a disconnect. So this report is focused on the ongoing sustainability of that Kai Hub service offering. And so how could we continue to deliver that type of service? And that is, for me, that is supporting what you're trying to achieve with the overarching Kaipara Kai program of work.
So then why does it on the cover say Kaipara Kai Sustainability Review when we have a Kaipara Kai activation plan, which is separate from the Kai Hub? And you see, because the title of this report says Kaipara Kai Sustainability Review. So I'm just trying to get the clarity around which piece we're talking about. Is this about the hub, or is this about the Kaipara Kai project in its? I'm just trying to get that clarity based on the report. Yeah.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think you've picked up an error or a typo that we hadn't picked up because we were in the detail of it. For me, this report has been about the Kaipara Kai Hub and our role within that and our delivery of those kinds of activities. I take your point. I need to rebrand the report and make sure that when it references, it's clear in the distinction between the two.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Councillor Withy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think you've said a lot of things. Prefacing my concern, having read the report, is that you know, again, there was a little bit of cloudiness in terms of the direction it was going. You know, coming up with things like generic and specialist advice, I just wonder whether, you know, at the end of the day, there are so many different areas and organisations, whether they be Crown institutes or private enterprises, who are providing very good and high quality advice to the, if you like, the rural section, whether it be animal farming, horticulture, or whatever. And just to say that we're talking about having a hub in Kaipara, I would have thought that could have just as easily been provided by having a very, very high level quality website where anyone who's involved with farming the land in any form at all could just go into that and get directed to the right area without having to go and separate, you know, have a separate exercise, which is just another overlay on a whole series of overlays. I think the model that, in terms of the pilot trials that are underway, they're on a very small scale. What I witnessed in Argentina a few years ago, where a very philanthropic and rich Argentinian had bought 2 ranches, and it was demonstrating to the Patagonian farmers that they could do something other than be subsistence sheep holdings. And he irrigated one, and the difference between the land around his ranch and the irrigated land was like colour TV compared to a very poor quality black and white. He was demonstrating by actually doing it. In the second ranch, he put in a whole series of root crops and above ground crops to demonstrate that at elevated, going up the Andes, you could make a completely different horticultural, economic way of life. And he was doing it by showing. And that's what we're doing in these pilot plants, which I think is on a very small scale. If you haven't got someone or an organisation who's prepared to put money on the table to demonstrate how they can do it, the best thing to influence anyone who's currently on the land who's a bit resistance to change is to actually show them and produce the results in front of their eyes. And that's the best way of convincing them. I just think going back to your generic and specialist advice is just another way of putting an overlay on what's basically already there. And I'm a bit disappointed, to be fair, about all this effort that's gone in, and we haven't really achieved a hell of a lot at all. So, you know, I don't know whether you've considered other ways of doing things rather than just coming up with an idea which I would have thought was fairly well known by everyone.
So is there a question there for clarification, Councillor Withy, just to be specific?
Yeah, I'd like to know, you know, what other, you know, your perspectives seem to focus mainly on being an advice generating organisation that you for the sustainable future. What other ones have you actually been able to come up with that is going to give more positive results? That's all.
I think the question you're asking, Peter, is a more fundamental question that's kind of outside the scope of this piece of work. This piece of work was part of...
This is a huge report, you know, when you look at the size of it and the, I don't know what the hell the cost was, but at the end of the day, it's very nice and nice to have on your shelf, but what is the real value?
So this piece of work was one of the requirements you asked us to complete in terms of thinking about how we could continue to deliver Kaipara Kai hub services. That's what the piece of work was focused on. It didn't cost us a huge amount. It's quite a comprehensive report, but I think your question is quite a different question around what are the right economic development interventions you can make in your community and across that primary sector to encourage growth.
Exactly. It's a matter of how do you encourage generational mind changes in the current communities in the district to come up with something that's going to achieve a more sustainable growth pattern, or a pattern that will take into account climate change and a whole series of other issues that we're having to address in the future. That's the real issue.
Yeah, I understand the issue completely. It's an issue we are seeing with our Extension 350 program in terms of delivery of farming extension, around where you might go next with that as well. It's probably a conversation to pick up outside of this forum, because as I say, it's a much more strategic economic development conversation than what this report was trying to achieve.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification of Vaughan at this point? Councillor Lavaris Woodcock.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the feedback from stakeholders in iwi again, and whether, because there was a huge amount of enthusiasm from them, and I was wondering if they have a certain labour model, like if that's a demographic change that's actually a reality, i.e. iwi Māori tangata whenua wanting to live back at the Papakainga and being willing workers and a labour source. You know, is that pie in the sky, or is that actually on the ground a reality? Is there a workforce that Te Roroa has to have market gardens and to do entrepreneurial work in the food growing sector? Is that a reality, or is that a kind of an idea I've got in my head?
So I think there's two answers to that. I think there is an untapped resource in terms of people who are willing and able to contribute to that kind of community scale and that social good stuff. But I think also we shouldn't lose sight of iwi are really interested in ensuring that their people have ongoing, well-paid permanent employment. So there's kind of both things in there as well. So there's a need to. So iwi are interested in getting into horticulture so that they can employ their people on site as orchard operators, those kind of roles. But I think equally there is certainly there is the social side of it too, and there is a resource in there where there are people willing and able to contribute across a range of different skills, and there'll be retired people, there'll be people who just have time and capacity. So it's making the most of both of those things.
Mm-hmm. And just my final question is, I guess everyone knows in the room here, but Māori were the most amazing entrepreneurs in the founding times of Tamaki Makaurau. They grew all the food for a growing city or town there. So it can be done.
Sorry, that's a statement. Thank you, Councillor Lavaris Woodcock, but that's all good. So Vaughan, so I have a further question, and it's in the strategic space again here. The Kaipara Kai Project fitting inside Kaipara Kickstart. The Kaipara Kickstart project is an integrated economic development strategy, right? And you've acknowledged that in the very first couple of sentences of the report. That integrated strategy includes the linkage between our roads to the ends of the peninsulas, the ancestral marae principally for Te Uriahau, which are near the tips of those peninsulas, the poor roads, the wharf network on the Kaipara Harbour, and our connections with all of Auckland from the Kaipara Harbour noting that the other side of the Kaipara Harbour is in fact already in Auckland, but opening up that entire channel into Northland. So the Kaipara Kai Project, of course, includes reference to shipping food from Kaipara District out by sea across the Kaipara Harbour. What is the approach to integrating that thinking that's already been done and the $800,000 of work and research that is in the Kaipara Kai project already, of integrating that into the upcoming Northland economic development strategy when you've already got a complete piece of that regional strategy already locked and loaded and ready to go because it's already completely signed off, if you like? What is your approach to integrating this Kaipara Kickstart work and the Kaipara Kai work into the upcoming regional strategy?
Yeah, great question, thank you. And the same applies across each of the districts. They're all at various stages of their own strategic planning. I guess my simple response to that is the regional economic development strategy needs to acknowledge and build on those existing pieces of work, not replicate them, not relitigate any of the conversation. It's how do we build on those strengths, those district or spatial strengths, and how do we incorporate a strategy that maximizes those things across the region. So there's quite a hefty stock take required around where is everybody up to with the different reports and the different strategies and thinking, combine all those things together and say, well, what else do we need to add to it?
Okay, thank you. So thank you for that. Are there any further questions for clarification? No further questions. Thank you, Vaughan. You may stand down for now. Of course, upcoming item also is the Kaipara Kai water piece. I assume you'll be staying for that, but thank you. So at this point, we'll go to Councillor Curnow for an opening statement. Thank you.
I want to thank the consultants and Northland Inc. for creating this report. It does emphasise that there is value in that advisory soft space, and the challenge being the funding. And I'm glad to hear that there is ongoing work in terms of trying to continue that softer advisory space work. I look forward to getting news that someone, possibly Plant and Food, are to assist with that, because as we know, change comes with culture change, and that is a long process. It doesn't happen in 12 months. It takes a long time to build confidence that change is even possible and that it may be beneficial. So yeah, I'm happy to see the report and look forward to see what comes next. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vincent.
Nothing to add, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there further statements to be made here? No statements from elected members? No. Quick statement from me. Thank you, Vaughan, for the presentation today. Thank you for the report. I note that it's dated July, and it would have been nice if it had come to us in March or April, when we would have still had time to have been able to deal with things before June, when the project actually concluded regarding the Kai Hub, when all the money ran out. So of course, there's disappointment here, but from the from this brief shining moment that was the Kaihub, if you like, we can see that the learnings from the economic development integrated approach from Kaipara are now looking to go into a Tai Tokerau Kai project. So that's really encouraging, and we're seeing a future pathway here. I'm very encouraged, Vaughan, to hear your optimism for taking on the already integrated economic development strategy from Kaipara District and embedding that into the regional one, and looking forward to all of the produce from Te Tai Tokerau being able to leave through the ports inside the Kaipara Harbour and the wharf network down to Auckland, to our cousins there, because of course we have, they will be sending food one way and bringing tourists the other, on the return trip. And that is, of course, the very essence of economic development, is on doing better what you already do well. And for Kaipara, well, Kai is literally in our name, and that is what we do well. So while there's a hiatus between now and the next Kai Hub facility, probably based in Kaikohe, we will just simply expect that all the good primary producers of Kaipara will just be getting on with the job and making food to feed a hungry world. So we'll be doing our bit in this part of the region, and are looking forward to the strategies to join everything up again in the future. Kia ora. Is there any further comment from anyone? Councillor Curnow, closing statement?
Nothing further.
All right, thank you. We're putting this to the vote now, the noting of this report. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, page 93 of the agenda, the Kai Water Project, linked to what we were just talking about, the Kai Water Project. So I'm seeking a mover for this, the noting of this project update. Councillor Curnow, thank you. And a seconder for this? Councillor Lavaris Wilcox, thank you. So that's onto the table. Joe, over to you to lead this item. Kia ora.
Thank you. Kia ora, Your Worship. So as per usual, I'll take all of the reports read for the remainder of today's meeting, and I'll just provide updates on anything that may have changed from when the report was written, or any supplementary information that I think is worth noting. As regards to the Kai Water Project, the planting on both sites has not yet started. Just to confirm, the report itself states that planting would start on the 18th of October on both sites. To clarify the reasons around that, for Site 1, the Manganui Bluff site, the planting is now scheduled for the 16th of November, and that is in order for it to align with the Maori lunar calendar. So that's been on the basis of a request of the landowner himself. For Site 2, the Kaipara, the ground is still too wet in order for the planting to take place. It's been much wetter than anticipated this time of year, as I'm sure we've all seen. The ground has been sprayed to kill the vegetation in preparation for planting, and it's provisionally planned to start from next week. Of course, weather dependent, but this week seems to have been better thus far. I also wanted to touch on the risk to planting of COVID, given the current environment and the fluctuating nature of lockdowns. So Northland Inc. have confirmed that while there is effects happening on the supplies to seeds in particular, due to the lockdowns, they do in fact have all of the seeds that are required already in the Northland Inc. offices. And so they've jumped ahead of that and mitigated the risk there. Regarding the planting itself, Site 1 planting will be done by Northland Inc. staff and with support from Te Roroa staff. And Site 2 will be done by some contractors in that area. The contracting workforce is actually considered an essential workforce under Level 3 for these nature of works. And so the feedback from Northland Inc. and what we are quite comfortable with is that they have a secure mitigation plan in place should we slip into another level 3 situation over the coming month or two. They've also given detailed explanations as to when the crops themselves can get planted and how late that could be, just to show that there's some resilience in there as well. So feeling quite confident in that space. We also, and I believe you should actually have received invitations to the events at both sites, placeholder diary dates of the 30th of November for Site 2 Te Kopero and the 7th of December for Site 1, Wanganui Bluff. And that is for the field days to bring members of the public and yourselves and members from MB out to the demonstration sites and really showcase that water irrigation. And so the date's placeholder for now and will be confirmed closer to the time. You can expect to see a lot coming out from our communications team as well over the month of November, promoting these sites and trying to drill up a bit of demand. And that's everything. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there questions for clarification regarding the Kai Water projects? Councillor Lavaris Woodcock.
Yeah, thank you. And excellent to see those images of the plants in the ground. My question is, Joanne, about fertilizer inputs. I'm thinking about resilience, and the world is so crazy. You know, is there a policy or a protocol of sustainability in this project, like green manures? So will there be a plant that follows the fallow period of growing that will return humus and nitrogen to the soil, like alfalfa or something? Is what I'm trying to ask is that this, you know, the planting hasn't happened, it's got to happen very soon, and it would be good to see an holistic, you know, if the Māori calendar's being abided by, then are we looking at, like, sorry, my menopause brain, are we looking at that thing called seaweed fertilizer? Are we looking at an alternative, you know, rather than petrochemical, DAP, NPK fertilizers? Is there been thought given to alternative things? Question.
Thank you. Now, that is not something I know the answer to. Vaughan, I don't know if that's something you could talk to, possibly.
I think the answer is yes, definitely. Yep.
Good. Excellent. That's it. Those are my, oh, so also the spray irrigation plants that were chosen, that was really interesting about the kanga mai crop. And are those crops the ones that are suitable to overhead irrigation rather than inline? Is the specifications of the different trial sites to do with, like, the inline irrigation suits those crops that are chosen and vice versa? So yeah, the two types of irrigation, like the overhead irrigation model. I'm trying to think about runoff and nutrient loss, and you know, this is actually real important demonstration site, because all around you know, in the South Island, the overhead irrigation is damaging the ecosystems down there with dairying. So I just want this to be something that shows that this is sustainable in a true sense, that it's not going, if this model of growing.
Your question, Councillor Lavaris Woodcock, please.
So my question is a selection of the crops being related to observing an observation of that method in terms of nutrient loss and suitability long term from that type of irrigation linked to that crop?
I'll hand over to Vaughan again, if that's okay. Thank you, Vaughan.
Yeah, no. I think it's one of a number of factors taken into consideration, because they're about the method of how you apply water, and as much it's about ensuring you have regular water available to those crops. There is obviously soil type and a range of other climatic factors you need to take into account on those sites, as well as what landowners and others' intentions are, or what they'd like to see, which is why you have quite a specific focus on the Monganui Bluff site. But it's one of a range of factors is the best way to answer that.
Thank you. I don't have, well, I do actually, about the window of opportunity for planting. Is that looking okay?
Yes, the only thing I would add to Joanne's comment already is we've got essential worker status for a couple of our staff as well. So we believe we have all of as much as possible, we have all the risks mitigated, and we will get something planted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification here? I have a question, and it links back to our meeting a month ago, where there was a clear request for consideration and a question then about utilising the water across the summer-autumn period to get a second crop on the same piece of ground to follow the first crop, to absolutely maximize the potential of water. Noting that sweet corn doesn't need to be irrigated, that there are already more than 1,000 hectares of sweet corn's cousin maize grown all across the alluvial flats in the Kaipara really successfully. So it doesn't need an irrigator to be wonderful. So it's going to be interesting how that works. But my key question is about what are we doing? Because we talked about it a month ago, and where is that in these reports about the shoulder? Just like in tourism, you have a shoulder season. So we're talking about exactly that here with the utilization of the water, not the primary growing season, but the second season. Where is the thinking? We talked about it a month ago. What's happening here?
Yeah. So Your Worship, in the update from previous month, last month's activities section, there is detail there regarding a discussion with Northland Inc. regarding the requirement to demonstrate exactly as you say the potential of the shoulder seasons, and that's something that Northland Inc. will be looking into, and they'll do it as part of that second crop cycle. So the primary focus right now is getting the planting in the ground for this crop cycle. Following which it will be a quick turnaround to the next. But it is being addressed by the project team.
So can you please point me to exactly where in these reports that is?
Of course. Page 92 on the report, or I believe it's 95 on the PDF. And about a third of the way down the page. So it's just above where you have the two tables showing Site 1 Monganui Bluff. Excuse the pronunciation.
Yeah.
And so it's the fourth bullet point in that section.
Hang on. I don't see that, so I'm looking at that. This is a project. This is called Open Project Risks. Right?
If I were to share my screen, Your Worship, would that be of value?
I'm on page 95.
Okay, so it's page 92 if you're looking at the page numbers on the
92,
report
sorry.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have the section called Update from Previous
I
Month.
see it now. Okay, sorry, I see it now. Thank you. Confirm this will be addressed in second crop cycle. What can you please explain? What does that mean? Because the first crop cycle, if you make the first crop cycle shorter, then your second crop cycle will be more viable. But for example, after your after the harvest of the kangama, then it's very, very short second cycle. So what's the timeline for the analysis rather than being addressed in the second crop cycle? But is it, when are we going to see that?
So the work will be being done over these next series of weeks. So the immediate focus is the planting for this crop cycle. Just to be clear, that is where all efforts are going at this point in time. Once we have the crops planted and once we have it established, that is then when efforts will go into that second cycle to establish what crops will be planted and exactly when that will take effect.
Okay, lovely. So so based on the plan that you've got here, we should expect to see in, well, I dare say it's going to be the February meeting, which is when those crops will be, some of them harvested of the first ones, and then the next will be arguably already planted before this committee will get to see what that would be.
I would anticipate that in the November, at latest the December meeting, we would be able to give an indication of what that plan looks like for the second crop cycle. So again, to gain the councillors' feedback on what crops will be planted and the strategy around it. And then following which it would be actioned early next year. Yes.
Lovely. Thank you. That's very clear. Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? No further questions. Thank you. Thank you. So thank you, Vaughan. Thank you, Joe. Councillor Curnow, statement.
Yep, it's good to see that we are getting very, very close to putting that first crop in the ground. I do support the Mayor's interest in seeing what that second crop will look like and what the plan is around that. But I'm really pleased to see we are very, very close, and I look forward to at our next meeting seeing pictures of it all having been done. So yes, and also interesting to hear that the team is focused on the sustainability issues as Councillor Lavaris Woodcock raised. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lavaris Woodcock. Statement.
I'm very excited about this. I remember when our council hired a van, and one of the Kaihub managers, I forget his name, I think maybe Mark. Anyway, he drove us around and we looked at the future Te Tai Tokoro Water Trust sites, but we also looked at the Te Kōparu demonstration site. And I remember saying to Councillor Vincent that I had tried to purchase some soybeans to make tofu, and they're not available in New Zealand. So the only tofu manufacturer grows their own. So I'm very excited to see how the Endamame soybean crop comes out and whether that's viable. But I'm also really delighted to see the demonstration of community engagement about the selection of the Ka'angama corn trial. And I just think that that's really neat. It shows that the community has had a part in selecting the crops that will be grown. And I'm sure they're all waiting to see how it all goes. So awesome.
Thank you. Further statements, Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, in relation to this issue of the second crop, some terminology, if I could clarify first. You sow seeds, you plant plants, okay? So where you can get a benefit or an advantage of the second crop, if that was plants that were being planted, so that you've already germinated the seed and you've got baby plants, and there are mechanical or semi-mechanical means of mass planting. Alternatively, well, as you have, say, even with kumara crop, alternatively, small scale, it might be something that's done by hand, but it would be a means of shortening that interval between ending one crop and getting another one underway. That's all. So that's just a little suggestion there, because I do think that otherwise it's going to show a limited value. And I guess to summarise Councillor Lavaris Woodcock's concerns about the fertiliser, I think she's making a difference between organic fertiliser and synthetically manufactured fertiliser, and I support that. Cheers.
Thank you. Councillor Wethy, statement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, look, I'm very heartened that we're finally getting to the sharp end of this project after all the delays early on. And I think, I think we all recognise, especially after listening to the previous discussion on the previous topic, that this is absolutely critical that we get some success or get some runs on the board with this project. It's visually it could be a huge influencing have an influencing effect on a very wide range of horticultural enthusiasts throughout the district. So I'm really very pleased to see it's got to this stage. I think the Mayor's comment about the second crop is absolutely vital. This is how we extend and grow the economic potential of the district, is to extend the growing cycle, and so getting two crops and demonstrating how they can be harvested economically and successfully is going to be a major objective, I think, that we'll hopefully be able to see come out of the end of this growing season. So well done to everyone this stage, but of course the proof is in the pudding. We've got to get the crops in the ground, we've got to get them harvested, so there's a lot of work ahead, but I think we'll be heartened to see some very encouraging results hopefully at the end of this growing season. So well done everyone. I look forward to the results. Thank you.
Thank you. Further statements, Councillor Larson? No, right. A quick statement from me. Look, we're growing the Kai and Kaipara. It's in our name. It's what we do. This is what the local community knows and does best. We have the water storage projects on the west coast, including which have nothing to do with the council, but instead with the Taitokara Water Storage Trust, are very near to the Te Kopuru demonstration site that we're talking about here. Those projects are running, if you like, over there off the screen, if you like, and are making huge progress at the same time. The integration of all of this work together is the Kaipara Kai Project, and is of very significance for this food basket just above Auckland. I'm really excited about these projects. And the selection of the crops. I'm really interested I'll be interested to see more about the soybean trial, because I had been led to believe that all soybean seeds were genetically modified organisms. So I would be very concerned if they're actually GMO seeds that are being planted, especially because Kaipara right now is not GMO free. And so that's I put that out there as a concern in a statement. But the opportunities for the new crops that are coming through, things that have never been grown here before, commercially being trialed, that's very, very exciting. So we, like I say, we're growing the Kai and Kaipara, and that's in our name. Yeah, it's very central to our name, and so looking forward to the next reports and future indications of the shoulder season crop, if you like, the second crop for the summer autumn and its success. Thank you. I'm very optimistic here. Are there further statements? Councillor Larson? No, right. Back to Councillor Kuno for a closing statement, if you choose.
Nothing further to add.
Nothing further. Thank you. All right. So we'll put this to the vote now about noting of this report. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Again, carried. Thank you. Thank you, Vaughan, for your attendance this morning. You're welcome to stay on. The next item also is of interest to Northern Inc., no doubt, regarding tourism. So you're welcome to stay. We're moving now, ladies and gentlemen, to the Kaihub Valley Trail Project update.
I'll move that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lavaris Woodcock is moving that, and I'll second that. So thank you. That puts this onto the table. Joe, over to you. Kia ora.
Thank you. So it's been a busy month for the Kaihub Valley Trail project. You'll notice the schedule is still tagged as red. In reality, it's probably more of an amber now. It's tagged red in reflection that the MB milestones, so our contractual milestones, required construction to start on the 1st of October this year. We have been engaging regularly with MB, and they are aware of the delays to the building, the earthworks consent, and they are comfortable that construction will start early November. So there's no real risk there as such, but we just felt it was appropriate to tag it red, given that we are technically behind the contractual milestones. So you can see that turn back to green, most likely as of next month once construction is underway. Regarding the earthworks consent itself, we anticipate to receive that in the coming few days. So it's currently with the planners. And you should all, I believe, have invitations to an unveiling ceremony on the 5th of November, which will be the unveiling of the Kaihub Valley Trail signage. It'll also be the date where we launch the website for Kaihub Valley Trail, and it will also mark the beginning of construction. So a fantastic milestone for us to be getting to for this project. I think the team's fairly amped for it. We've also had a lot happening in the procurement space for Kaihub Valley Trail this past month. So we've got an RFT which is just closed for the fencing contract. We've got another RFT underway for the bridges contract, and we've got a ROI, so a register of interest, underway for a minor structures contract. So it's all really starting to gear up now. We also had a really positive hui with the Taita Marae. Felt really strong engagement there, and it was a really positive environment of everyone being quite engaged in trying to find solutions, which is really reassuring for the project. Still more work to be done in that space, I'm sure, but a good step forward. There does still continue to be more engagement required for some properties at the northern point of the trail, but as discussed before, due to the way we're structuring this project around the separable portions, we don't expect that to have any true impact on the programme or overall delay on the construction itself. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for clarification, elected members? Councillor Lavaris Woodcock.
Yeah, so thank you, Joanne. It's very clear that this is a multi-stranded, very challenging program. I've got a few questions. One about the Dargaville makeover. Has that been interrupted by COVID? Is it a Dargaville Community Development Board able to pull that together before the sod turning ceremony? That's one question. That's my first question.
For clarification, when you say the Dargaville makeover, is that a specific project, or I'm not familiar? Sorry.
Yeah, it says here Dargaville Community Development Board. This is on page 101 of the agenda. Are aware of the impact that the Kaihub Valley Trail will have in the community, and they're starting a project called Dargaville Makeover to be ready for the KVT opening.
Of course, so a community-led makeover event for so I don't have any more recent update on that, but I can happily take that away and I'll ask Amanda and come back to you, if that's okay, Councillor.
Yes, and then the next question is about the possible sponsorship from some corporates that may be stakeholders in the region, and could you talk about any updates on that?
Yeah, happily. So the project itself is taking a bit of a crowdfunding approach, shall we say. So we currently have an application in with Whakakotahi, which has been provisionally approved for an additional 600,000 of funding. So we anticipate to hopefully receive confirmation of that next month. The Kaihub Valley Trail will, I mean, initially we applied for 9 million and we received 4. So the team has always known that if we can gain in additional funding, we will be able to put it to good use. And that's where Amanda, who leads the community engagement piece, has been reaching out to different businesses, stakeholders to understand if there's an appetite to endorse or support. Nothing's confirmed as yet in that space, but there are an awful lot of conversations happening. So yeah, we'll keep that in the reports over coming months, but there's nothing formally confirmed at this point.
And my final question, thank you for that answer. So I can see this is all a work in progress and things, you know, if this project is going to come into being with the heart and soul of many people and the property group report. So I can see that that kind of wonderful term represents a mare's nest of entanglements of easements and ownership, and I bet, is that part of the most challenging part of the project?
There are sections in the northern part of what will be the trail where we've been gaining advice around just what the legalities across the land are. Yes.
Thank you. I think those are all my questions answered. Thank you, Joanne.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Curnow, question.
Yeah, I just have a question around the future in terms of, yeah, we've got the structure we have at the moment is really involved in the development of the trail and the building of it and all of that, but often there's a different approach needed once something is in place. So I'm just wondering what discussions are in train, or what's the thinking around what happens next?
I'm smiling because if you'd been privy to a conversation I had 2 days ago, it was on this very topic.
Okay.
So yes, and you're absolutely correct. The project that's in place right now is to construct a cycle trail. The future legacy of that cycle trail and the success to the local economical environment is a whole different matter. And so our communications manager and myself, we were having that conversation earlier this week going, right, we need to start having conversations here around, I would almost term it like business readiness. So what are we doing to ensure that the trail itself is a success? And do we need to set up some sort of separate workforce, separate something? Who knows? Still to be figured out. But yes, the conversation started.
And obviously a really rich community engagement in that process, and whatever that structure is was probably, because we need, at some point there needs to be a sharing of the ownership out with the community, into my mind. Yeah.
And we've been fortunate that we have an advisory group set up for this project,
right?
Where we have representatives from the far north, where they've introduced their own cycle trails. We've got a representative from Whakakotahi who's been very heavily involved in cycle trails across the country. So some really, really good minds there who are giving us some great things to consider and think about. Yeah.
Great. No, that gives me comfort. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? I have a repeat question from earlier meetings. Would it be possible for, it's a question and a request, would it be possible for the map to have the Kaihub River shown on it very clearly? So that people can see the difference between where the trail is beside the river and where it's not beside the river. I believe I've been asking for this for months now, and so I mean, so it's a request. It could be a question of why hasn't it happened, but
Happily, Your Worship, and apologies if that has slipped from reactions list over recent months. Yes, we'll take that away and see if we can get that updated for you.
Thank you, thank you. And the reason for that is because as this progresses, it helps to tell the story, and for people who are looking at various parts, we want it to be clear for them and for everyone about where is this beside the river and where is it on the road and where is it on the old rail line.
I believe just to supplement for the time being, whilst the map is as is, there is notice on the map which shows where it is a river section of the route. So where it's a bold blue line is the river component, most namely in separable portion 4, you'll see a large section like that.
Correct. Yes, can see that. So, but it's both sides of that, because it's a core part of the character of the entire space, if you like. Yep. And gives it its name. So yeah. So the are there further questions? No further questions? Oh, Councillor Lavaris Wilcox, sorry. Yes.
Sorry, I didn't get my hand up on the screen, but never mind. Here is my question about the Kaihub Valley Trail logo. Is there any work on that, or is there something come into being yet?
So it is currently with Te Roroa and various marae for consultation on it. And so last I heard was we were awaiting their feedback on the logo itself.
Okay, so there's been one designed and put out for approval.
Yes, yep.
Excellent.
Thank you. So and so on that, so the elected members of the council get to see that for the first time at the unveiling event on the 5th of November.
If you would prefer, Your Worship, I'm sure we can arrange to have it shared with you all in advance of that. It may not be in a long time in advance, but if that would make you more comfortable.
I would say, considering it's our project, yes. And that's just would be normal governance. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? No further questions. All right. Thank you. Councillor Lavaris Wilcox, statement.
Yes, so I think that what I've taken from the report has actually been augmented by Councillor Curno's very important question about going forward, because you know, for many years this has been in the pipeline, and no one needs me to repeat that. But of course, we need it to support our community's well-being. So I'm suddenly thinking of all the work that will be involved in that, and there are many strands. And so I would like to say that it's amazing to me that all of this work has been going on behind the scenes. While I've been here, people have been very focused, and I can see that. So I'm very pleased that the Taita Marae engagement went well, that our mayor attended, because I know that that was a crucial event for the success of the project. So it seems like the planets are lining up well, and I carry forward positive sorry, I'm not very articulate, positive thoughts for the development of the project, and look forward to seeing the logo and attending the sod turning ceremony on the 5th of November. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Quick statement from me. This project is exciting. It appears to have passed a major milestone, and in the last month, and getting the cultural impact assessment across the line was absolutely key. So well done everyone for that. The overall direction of the project, it's increasingly complex and dynamic as it goes, and certainly having a project management office inside Kaipara District Council is really significant here. And the whole project team is to be congratulated, especially Amanda Bennett for her community liaison that's occurring across the community, of course. Also, just picking up on Councillor Lavaris Wilcox statement, just correcting a minor thing there. I've had engagement with some iwi leaders. The hui a iwi at Taita Marae has not occurred yet for me. But there was a small meeting in the office of the mayor in Dargaville. I'm going to say 2 months ago, which was very, very constructive at the time. And we were setting up the Huia Iwi at Taita, which still has not been able to take place because of COVID and the COVID lockdowns, which are impacting all of these projects, need to be noted with regarding slowing down all of the progress and timelines here. And that is one of the impacts which regrettably has occurred, is that engagement hasn't been as good as I would have liked it to be. But it's nobody's fault. It's blame the virus. We'll blame the virus on that one. But look, congratulations to the team on the progress that's being made here, and looking forward to the next steps. And within a few short weeks, the launching of a logo around which people will be able to cycle their little huts out for many years to come. So I hope I'll be able to bring my e-bike to that event. That'd be cool. So yeah, congratulations everyone here. Thank you. Are there further statements from elected members? No further statements. Councillor Lavaris Woodcock is the mover. You have a closing statement opportunity.
Nothing further to add, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
thank you. We'll put this to the vote now then on the noting of this report. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on, thank you to the Kaiwaka footbridges item. And so I'm seeking a mover for the noting of this report. Councillor Wethy, thank you. And a seconder for that, Councillor Curnow, thank you. That's onto the table. Joe, kia ora.
Thank you. So Kaiwaka footbridges tracking green, tracking very well and very much on plan for construction completion February this coming year. The team have recently been advised that we believe they will be eligible to receive an exemption from building consent, and that's on the basis of the designer and builder, Bridget, providing a PS1 for the design. So the team are just working through that process, and that's a really good step forward for us on that basis. You'll see attached in the report as a very technical drawing of the design itself for those who might be interested in it. And yeah, there's probably not much more to add on that one. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Are there any questions for clarification on this item? No questions for clarification. Excellent. No questions for clarification. Good. Thanks, Joe. You may stand down on this one. Statements, Councillor Wethy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, look, it's so far so good on this one. We're going pretty well to the plan, and everything's meeting targets to date. So we just hope that it'll carry on in this vein till the completion of the project. Very good. Thank you, Joe, for putting the design drawing of the proposed bridge. That gives us a very good idea about how that's likely to look when it goes over the streams. And yeah, so good, so far so good. So best of luck carrying on, and we just love to see all of these green blocks occurring on the reports each month. So carry on the good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Curnow, sorry you've just gone off screen as the seconder. Would you like to make a statement?
Yeah, just to add my voice to Councillor Wethy's, it's really good to see the progress, and yeah, I really look forward to being able to deliver on this project for the people of Kaiwaka.
Yep. Thank you. Further statements, elected members. Yeah, quick statement from me. This is great for the gateway town. It's great if it's going to be a summer opening of this bridge and just in these bridges, and the improved connectivity for Kaiwaka and safety of the people can't happen soon enough. So this is great. Again, congratulations to the project team for everything that's going on here. Thank you. Councillor Wethy, closing statement from you?
No, nothing further from me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So we're putting this to the vote now on the noting of this report. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Page 117 of the agenda, the Mangawhai Shared Path Project update. Councillor Wethy will be moving.
Yes, I'll move that.
I'm happy to second this. Thank you. And Joe.
Thank you. So the main update to Mangawhai Shared Path since the report was written is that we have since found a solution for the phase 2 design as regards to the resource consent. So in the report, it mentions an issue regarding the visual impact assessment of what was planned. Well, since the report was written, we have now found a solution that both the visual impact specialist and the locally impacted landowner are happy with. And so that's being provided to the planners now to work through. So really good outcome, and quite quickly turned around actually by the team. So kudos to them. You'll notice we have provisional approval from Whakakotahi for the funding for phase 2, and that's why the budget continues to track amber. It's just until that funding is formally confirmed, we'll just keep that as amber for this point in time. Regarding the phase 1 works, so the intersection piece in particular, we did take on board the feedback from last month's committee session regarding anything that can be done to expedite the works further, to see if we can bring it into the right side of Christmas for completion. United Civil have been working all hours, really working during the night as well, in an attempt to catch up on the programme. At present, it does not look like we will be able to bring that back any further than what's currently quoted in the papers. But just to give that reassurance that the team really is, it's not losing its focus on it, and they are very much trying to do everything they can to expedite the programme. The challenge is the programme had already been expedited so much to this point to get it to the point of even being near to Christmas. And we just don't have much space left in it, unfortunately. And nothing more that I would add on this one. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lavaris Woodcock, question for clarification.
Yes, I was just looking at the pictures, Joanne, and I can see, could you tell me the width of the shared path?
Exactly, not off the top of my head, to be honest. Nope.
I think it's 3. I mean, I know it's about 3 meters, but is it 3.5? I was just wondering.
No, 3.
Anybody know?
Councillor Bevy?
I'm pretty sure it's 3 actually, Councillor Lavaris Woodcock.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
also, my other question is about the contaminated land. Could you talk to what has happened there, and what actual was in the ground, what those substances were? It's in the schedule on the very bottom, grey.
In the issues section, yes. So there had been contaminated land previously in the area around the gas station, which was previously worked through and resolved. This is a new issue regarding more contaminated land that's been found around the intersection space, so Moore and Insleigh Street, Moore and Insleigh Street.
I'm thinking it might be an old rubbish dump. Am I correct?
I wouldn't know, to be quite honest. Apologies, Councillor. It's something that it will be worked through by our external consultants. So I believe WSP in this case, everyone's who are involved here, in working through that contaminant. So they'll take it and understand just what the materials are.
Okay, thank you. Those are my two questions.
Thank you, Councillor Withy. Question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Joe, just the first thing, on the first issue that you talked about, which is now being resolved, but this is for the resource consent for the bridge and the concern that one of the nearby residents had. I'm just curious, was this an NB concern, or was it a genuine concern? Because you know, has this added any further cost by the resolution that's come up with? Can you give any explanation there?
So the concern was a project-based concern. Just for clarification, sorry, Councillor, you're referring to the concern regarding the design of
yes, that's right,
bridge and boardwalk component itself. Yep.
Yeah.
So the concern was a project-based one on the basis that if we could not gain the endorsement of a visual impact specialist, they would not back the application for its consent. And the likelihood of us receiving a consent on that basis is unlikely. It's quite challenging. And so when we received that feedback from the specialist that they were not satisfied with what was being proposed, given that that had already been communicated with the landowner as well, it was a bit of a derail for us. Thankfully, as I say, it's been worked through very productively with the specialist and the landowner himself, and we've came to a good resolution that fits within the budget.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. Okay. I'm just that, like, anyone can who objects to something because it's in their backyard. That's just not a genuine reason for us going and doing a whole lot more work at extra cost to try and resolve that. And that was all I was concerned about, that it was a genuine and realistic concern that was being expressed that we've had to work around. But thankfully, you've got a resolution. The second thing was temporary business loss. Now, that's been quite a lot more severe, I think, than a lot of people had predicted at the beginning of the project. Some of the local businesses like Barmers have actually shut down. They've just not even bothered to try and continue to open the business. So what sort of level of extra risk is this likely to impose more cost than we originally thought at the beginning of this project for compensation of those affected businesses?
So can I just clarify one point regarding your earlier question, Councillor?
Yes.
So the concern raised was not by the landowner himself, it was by the specialist. So the landowner had endorsed the previous solution also and have been working very collaboratively with the project around it. So just to clarify there, it was a visual impact specialist who had concerns around the design rather than the landowner himself.
And so were they structural or just visual concerns?
Visual. So the visual impact specialist is a consultant who assesses the planned design and the impact that it will have to the local environment, so that it doesn't disrupt natural views or natural elements.
Well, I hope the visual impact specialists' views are consistent with the community's views.
In this case, I believe they are, thankfully.
Okay, all right. Okay, so go back to the business, the question on the business owners.
Yes, so regarding the business owners and compensation, so just for clarification, there are only 4 businesses that are eligible for any compensation as a regard to the works. Now,
Yep,
businesses typically are not eligible just due to disruption of public works. However, the 4 that are eligible is because we had land acquisition agreements in place with them, and so that therefore makes them eligible to compensation. The exact amount of compensation due is not known at this point, and that's something that we're working with the property group, and it will only be known when the works are completed and we do a retrospective assessment. And that's why it's there on the risks, is just so that we keep it front of mind, really. And don't lose sight of it that there will be that implication to the project budget at a point in the future. The level of impact itself, another consideration naturally would be the impact of COVID, which unfortunately will be hitting Mongify quite significantly, I believe. So there'll be a few elements to take into account.
Okay, thank you. Now, on the contaminated land, you still, in your comment here, talk about it being outside the gas station. Now, we knew about the contamination that had occurred from the leaking underground petroleum tanks there. I presume because you've mentioned it's outside the gas station that you're still referring to that, because that was raised in, I think, last month's report. And Tim Manning, I think's comments relating to the cost being covered by BP, which was the resolution through an Environment Court hearing at the time BP gave up the rights to that service station, was that BP would cover all remediation costs. Can you comment on whether or not Tim's discussions with BP have borne fruit, and so they will recover the cost rather than it being borne by the project cost?
I can't comment on that just now, but I will happily take it away and come back to you all with an answer on that from Tim, if that's okay, Councillor.
Okay, and was that the only contamination that we're talking about still?
Okay, I'll ask for clarification on both points then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor De Lavaris. Woodcock, more question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the first time I've been able to see the 3 metre wide or 3.5 metre wide path and get a feel for it. And my question is about the future amenity tree planting. So when we did the Mongify community plan, there was a slow streets vision, and the pictures that accompanied the vision that the community put forward had plantings, very specific plantings. And I don't know whether, so my question is there a plan to accommodate any vegetation, greenery? Is there space to one side of the shared path that would accommodate, for example, planter boxes or tubs for shade, or just for green cooling?
I'm trying to recall what the concept design looked like along the shared path, to be quite honest, Councillor, as to whether or not that was something that was taken into account. And I'm not certain, so if it's okay, and apologies to have to do this, but I'll take that question away also and confirm if that's all right. I'd rather get a clear answer.
So don't apologise, Joanne, because it's kind of out of scope and maybe something that I should have, it's my culpa mea, my bad for not thinking about it earlier. But now that so obviously there's a strong, I mean, the focus here is on mobility, and that is certainly going to be achieved, what you can see from the pictures, and safe mobility on different modes. So I guess if you take anything away from my question, it's to look to the next stage about amenity planting and the visual aspect.
Absolutely.
And
we
so,
do.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to add. We do, as a council, blue-green infrastructure is something that we do look at as well. And an example of that would be the Wood Street development, where blue-green infrastructure is really comes through. And so I do know that will have been a consideration of this project when they were doing the concept design. That much I can confirm. How much of that has been able to come through as regard to plantation itself? That's what I'll confirm.
Thanks.
I have a question, and it's indicated that for phase 2 of the project, the boardwalk and bridge sections, that construction is due to commence in January and February, and then due to ferry turn implications, work need to be undertaken between February and July. Now, bless the 45 ferry terns and all their children still to come. They're very, very precious little treasures. And here's my question. Are there resource consent issues that are not being met, or risks regarding the ferry terns, or is everyone satisfied if we are in the February to July period?
So one point for clarification is where it says January 22 for construction commencement, that's the contractual construction commencement date. What we're actually expecting is that it will start in March 22, possibly. So that's the expected date. So just to clarify on that there is that 2-month variance between when we expect the construction to start.
Sorry, the report says completion date,
Construction
not commencement date.
Construction commences, and then if we go along the line, it's green, and then January 22, and then March 22, and then there's a note on the ferry term. And just it's not as clear as it could be because the table is split over 2 pages, unfortunately.
Yeah, table's not so clear then.
So hence, just wanted to clarify that for you, Your Worship.
So just so we're clear, so the commencement of construction would be in March?
Yes, that's what we're forecasting. Yes.
For phase 2. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So that then is happy regarding the ferry terns.
There will still be, so we still need to take them into consideration, but yes, it's within that suitable ferry term window. Yes.
Very good.
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify your question, the 31st of July has been the figure that is, or the date that in all the hearings for the reconstructed wharf consent, etc., as well as the dredging programs for the Harbour Restoration Society, the 31st of March is the cut-off point for resource consents that they have received. So if as long as you're before the 31st of March, the ferry tern breeding season shouldn't come into question. So if we complete it all by the 31st of July, you'll be fine. If it goes beyond that, the question will be whether or not that location is going to in any way influence the breeding season, because the 2 breeding areas for ferry terns are midway and partially up the sand spit, which is a long way away from where the bridge is being constructed, unlike the dredging, which occurs right adjacent to that sand spit breeding area. So that just gives you a bit of extra information about what currently the consenting process takes into account as far as ferry tern breeding is concerned.
Okay, thank you. So back to the simple question. So are we in the clear regarding the ferry terns?
On plan, yes. However, a caveat is we have not received our resource consent yet. And so we understand that we are fine with it, and we've been engaging closely with the planners and the Ferry Tern Trust around it. But until we have formally received that consent and have the conditions down on paper in front of us, there is still a risk. But I'd say that's very much green at this point.
Okay, thank you. That's clear. I'd just like to welcome back Councillor Wilson Collins, who's having a very busy professional day. Kia ora, nau mai, and Tracy Dean as well, our governance advisor, who's managing this meeting, has been returned to her desk from a fire alarm event in the office in Mangawhai. So thank you both for joining us. Are there further questions for clarification at this point? So statements here, and I note Councillor Vincent's needing a cup of coffee, so we'll make this nice and short. Councillor Wethy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this project is picking up pace again after the temporary sort of slowdown over the last COVID lockdown. There's really very important progress being made even since these pictures were taken that are part of the report. The roundabout at the head of Inslee Street is, when I went round it yesterday, was almost ready to be sealed. and that's really made a major difference to the whole of the impact around that here. The traffic obviously still starting under the control of the traffic management people, but is still moving around there. And I think we're going to see some significant progress in terms of overcoming the traffic congestion during the seasonal events when that's all completed. Getting on to Councillor Lavaris Woodcock's concern about the shared path. The area of shared path from the Causeway Bridge up to the Mayor's, opposite Mayor's there. I walked down that there. That's progressing very well. And as of yesterday, it's getting ready to have seal put down the side of the road. So there's been quite a lot of progress since the time these photographs were taken. So I take my hat off to United Civil. I think everyone in the community, judging from Facebook comments, etc., is giving them a remarkably good report compared to the reports they normally give on social media to anything council does. I think this is quite a standout, actually, to be fair. So I think this all goes well for the completion of this project to meet the target dates that we've set. So well done to Tim and Joe and all the others involved in on this project. So carry on the good work.
Thank you. Statement from me as the seconder here is, picking up the final comment there. Congratulations, team, on keeping this rolling. It's incredibly challenging with the COVID lockdown restrictions that have particularly beset the community of Mangawhai and Kaiwaka, that's had heightened levels of disruption over other parts of Kaipara District in the last 2 months. And so very challenging for these significant projects such as this shared path project. So well done to the team keeping this rolling as best they could. It's a real shame that the government regulations wouldn't have allowed the roading projects such as this to have continued right through the lockdown. That would have been really great, but it was not permissible, so that didn't happen, hasn't happened. But I'm noting today, just for the record, of course, on the 20th of October, that the Kaipara District and Mangawhai is back at alert level 2 as of now, this morning. Yes. So so it's a better time for us all and faster progress ahead. So looking forward to further updates here. Thank you and well done. Congratulations, everyone. Tim and your team. Joe, thank you. Councillor Curnow has her hand raised to make a statement here.
Yeah, I just wanted to add thanks to the comms team. The contractors are doing a marvellous job, and the comms team are keeping the news of that work out and available to everyone. And the resulting positive feedback on social media is extraordinary. So congratulations to contractors, comms team, and to the project team for keeping this all on track.
Thank you. Are there further statements? No further statements. Councillor Worthy, do you want a closing statement?
No, nothing further from me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We'll put this to the vote now. The noting of this report on the Mangawhai shared path. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. At this point, 11:15, we've been going for 1 3/4 hours. Well done, team. That's the longest run we've had. This last point took a bit. We're going to break at this point for a 5-minute break. We'll return at 11:20 to continue with our meeting. The next piece being about the unsealed roading network. So 5-minute break. Thank you. 11:20. Kia ora. So it's a very important meeting that we have today, and very dynamic for us. Some of our elected members may be needing to leave the meeting soon, so I'm keen for us to keep moving on and keep this meeting clicking along nice and fast. So there are 3 of us present right now, not quite a quorum, so we cannot yet start. If elected members would please turn their cameras back on when they're back in the room, because we can't make a start until elected members are present. So like I say, 189 pages on today's agenda. There's 4, and we're needing a 5th. Either Councillor Vincent or Councillor Wilson-Collins. Councillor Larson has now officially left the meeting for the day. So we have a quorum situation now, with Councillor Wilson-Collins or Councillor Vincent being required to join us before we can make a start. Councillor Wilson-Collins has joined us. Thank you. So we now have a quorum. We can now continue with our meeting. Thank heavens. So at this point, we are picking up with the Unsealed Roading Network Project update, page 123 of the agenda. Councillor Lavaris Wilcox is moving this, and Councillor Curnow is seconding this. Thank you. Joe.
Thank you. I'll keep this very short and sweet. We have now spent 100% of the PGF portion of funding. So that was the initial 2.5 million that was awarded. It was spent on track with the initial timeframes as well. So brilliant achievement, shows how well this programme's been running over the past year or so. And we do now have 48, just over 48 kilometres of roads completed now to date. And now that the drier weather is coming in, you can expect to see that number ramping up over these coming months. Nothing more to add than that, Your Worship.
Thank you. Questions for clarification, elected members? No questions. Wonderful. This is a very happy scene. Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Thank you. No questions for clarification. You may stand down. Councillor Lavaris Wilcox, statement, please.
Yes, excellent to see in the photos. Thank you very much, Joanne, for supplying them the substantial nature of this unsealed road network improvement with the water tabling and waterheads and culverts. And it's all just so good for Kaipara and for our residents and ratepayers who daily, are challenged by our roads. And so vast improvement being given effect to right now. So wonderful. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Curnow for a second statement.
Just if I reflect on the last few pages of the report with the table of all the work that's underway, that's a really comforting table, in that there's so much that's underway, and that's not already underway as in design or completed, and there's very few projects which haven't been started. So compliments to the team on really cranking through this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Further statements, elected members? Look, quick statement from me. The roads are the key thing that our Kaipara residents reflect most about regarding our council. This work is on a scale that we've never seen before. And just congratulations to all of the team for this report, and if you look back across the entire journey of the PGF project and all of this work, this has been green flags the entire way. This has been a really well managed report. It is still coming through well managed, and we, at the conclusion of all of this, will be able to look back and go, this is the effects. This is where that strategic project really made a difference in lives and safety of journeys for our Kaipara people. And I couldn't be happier than I am to see this. Well done. Further statements? Closing statement from Councillor Lavaris Woodcock, if you wish.
No, thank you. Nothing further to add.
Okay, thank you. We're putting the noting of this report to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise their hands and say aye. Aye. Agreed. Carried. Thank you. Thank you. Well done, Joe, and thanks to the team out there. Thank you. Page 141, the Poto Road Phase 1 project updates. Councillor Curnow moving this, thank you. And I'm seeking a seconder for this. Councillor Wilson-Collins, thank you. Joe.
Thank you. Poto Road Phase 1 tracking very well. In fact, it's on track to be finished towards the end of this year, early next. So actually ahead of schedule. The schedule showed completion being April this coming year. So everything tracking green now as the risks regarding COVID have stabilised, and we've had confirmation that the crew can come out of Auckland as required. So going well. Nothing more to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I have a question for clarification. It links back with the Mangawhai Shared Path project where the project manager wasn't able to come out of Auckland. Can you talk to the difference?
There have been several variances that we've seen across all of the delivery suite, to be honest, Your Worship. Like a multitude of projects where some, when I say variances, sorry, I mean in the exceptions being granted versus declined. We have some projects where we are receiving the exemptions and some which are not. It is not in our discretion, unfortunately. It sits with the Ministry of Business regarding the approvals around the requests put forward. I've not managed to figure out any great science behind why some are being approved and some are being declined.
Thank you. Would it be, it's a closed question, I guess. How it's going to come as a closed question, sorry. Could we get some kind of indication on how many of those requests have been made and how many have been successful and how many have been rejected regarding being able to see the impacts on the COVID for these projects?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm speaking to the inconsistency here because through my office, I'm involved with conversations about people who can't get through the border all the time. And the first that I've learned about what you're talking about is right now regarding our projects and the inconsistency here. For us internally, I'm receiving feedback and commentary from members of the community and putting that in at a regional level regarding the regional border between Kaipara and Auckland. We're still not sure how that regional border is going to play out. So I'm keen to be able to advocate for us to be able to keep these projects rolling. And so, yeah. And if we don't know, then we can't make a noise about it.
No, absolutely, and the support would be, would be fantastic, Your Worship. So I will happily gather some statistics around the applications that have been submitted, and the success or decline rate. Yep.
Okay, thank you. And possibly that report can also be appended, if I don't know, possibly to the next iteration of this committee, so that all the elected members can see that. Yeah, as this has come through here now for just for transparency. Thank you, thank you. Are there further questions for clarification here regarding Poto Road Phase 1? No further questions? Thank you, thank you. Councillor Curnow as the mover. Thank you. You're on mute.
Thank you. Yeah, nothing really to add. This is a good project tracking along. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson-Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Joe. Really awesome to hear the news that we have a project that may finish early. So that's actually, yeah, really made my day. So it's a really awesome project, and so let's hope that there's no further delays or cost increases caused by our COVID restrictions, and we just get it out, get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Further statements? No further statements. Thank you. We'll put this to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hands and say aye. Aye. Against? Aye. Carried. Thank you. Poto Road Phase 2. A darker story. I'll move this, and I'm seeking a seconder for this noting of this report. Councillor Vincent, thank you. Joe.
Thank you. So Poto Road Phase 2 is one that continues to be delayed due to the designer Stantec being in Auckland, and the final piece of work that we're looking to do around the design for Poto Road Phase 2 involves geotechnical assessment, and that individual being Auckland based. We have supported an application for an exemption to allow the border travel, as we've discussed just recently there. It's still pending, so we're still awaiting the outcome of that application. On the whole, we're not too concerned regarding this project, regarding the delay. It will undoubtedly be completed in line with the contractual timeframes, which requires it to be completed by June next year. It is just unfortunate to have it hanging on as well, as it were. It would be nice to get this one closed off. So as soon as we can have that specialist up from Auckland, that will be the case. And that's all. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions for clarification? No questions. So thank you, Joe. This one's pretty straightforward then. Statements from me. This again is a disappointing project, but the important thing is to have on file the design for the road for the future, sitting there ready for a future funding application for sealing Poto Road all the way to Poto, where the new wharf is going to be going. So that is still very much the longer term strategic goal here, but this way post of getting in place all of the design work for that is our focus right now. But it is disappointing we can't get on with making the road. Good luck with concluding this and making a great piece of design. Thank you. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not a lot to say that hasn't already been said either by yourself or others, including myself, at previous meetings. It gives me a rather hollow feeling actually in endorsing this project, because it's because it's kind of empty. And however, appreciate the quality of the work going into the project management of it, and I guess we just have to see it through. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Further statements? No further statements. Thank you. We're putting this to the vote now on the noting of this report regarding Poto Road Phase 2. All those in favour, please raise your hands and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on from one road to the next, Waipoua River Road. Councillor Wilson-Collins moving this. Councillor Curnow seconding this. Thank you. Joe.
Thank you. So Waipoa River Road, the big change here is that we have now had confirmation from MB to transfer that 200,000 of additional budget onto this project. So that's now been formally executed. We're in discussions with Fulton Hogan regarding the revised pricing for the project. So the negotiations are still ongoing, and that's why the budget is currently amber, just until the pricing is confirmed. There is a risk that the pricing will have escalated from last year when initially quoted, and that's something that the team are just working through with the contractor himself to make sure it comes in palatable with a reasonable contingency. A risk to be aware of on this project is we are currently seeing a very long lead time for materials regarding the traffic lights component. Can be anywhere in the realms of 16 weeks plus currently. The team have worked through what this means for the project, and as a worst case scenario, the solution is that we would do the road and then return at a later date with the materials to complete these components. So it's not something that's a showstopper. It just means that it may be partly completed and then fully at a later date once the materials are available. As soon as we have the pricing confirmed with Fulton Hogan, we'll then be placing orders for the materials, and we have been speaking with suppliers in the interim to try and keep things warm and try and jump ahead lead times as best possible. And nothing further to add, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Curnow, then Councillor Wilson-Collins. Thank you.
Just regarding the traffic lights, and I understand that it's a problem that's beyond our control to a certain extent, but are there safety aspects in partially implementing? Because I thought that the road had to have the traffic lights, and that's why it sort of went over budget. So yeah.
Correct. It does require the traffic lights, with it being a one accessway road round the particular corner, as you'll know, in Waipoa. And with it being sealed, it encourages faster travel on that piece of road. The team will work through mitigations for that risk as on a temporary basis. It might well even be a case of temporary traffic management, something like that, but it will be addressed. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson-Collins, then Councillor Withy.
Thank you. Just in regards to that pricing confirmation that we're waiting for, Joe, is there a time frame on when we will receive that and move out of that and know one way or the other? Yeah.
So we have received initial pricing, and I'd rather not go into specifics as to where it sits, because as I say, the negotiations are ongoing, but the conversations are underway. I'd expect within the next 2 weeks, it should be concluded.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Withy. You're on mute, Councillor Withy.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Joe, just going back to the traffic lights, in your comments there you say that it's uncertain the lead time due to shipping, which indicates the delivery, not a manufacturing lead time. Now, I would have thought that the traffic light signals are not something that would necessarily preclude air freighting. Is this an air freighting option you're looking at to keep that schedule on time? And would that be accommodated within the budget provisions?
I believe the shipping is from overseas rather from within New Zealand, so it would be the supplier doing the shipping to their own stocks, as I understand it, as opposed to us doing the shipping from the supplier to ourselves. But I will definitely take that point of feedback and ask the PM if they've addressed if air freight can be an option. Yeah. If
you wouldn't mind, because to be fair, shipping delays is not something that's abnormal. It occurs in many circumstances. And the first thing that you normally do is a cost benefit analysis on what about saying we want air shipping, air freight rather than sea freight. And sometimes it's not as big an upcharge as one would think. So it's worth looking at that option, and we appreciate your feedback when you get some more answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, further questions for clarification? No further questions. Thank you. Statements, Councillor Wilson-Collins and Councillor Curnow.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the only statement I really want to make is I feel really sorry for this little project. Every time we take 2 steps forward, we seem to take a step back. So really, really awesome to see the 200,000 officially now in the coffers. But now we've got to wait for the new pricing, and then we're able to go ahead with the project, but now we've got shipping delays. It's just a real shame that we can't, no one's fault, obviously. We're dealing with such extraordinary times, but it's just the poor little thing just can't get there. And I understand it was one of the first projects announced. Yeah, so yeah, I'm just holding out all my good vibes for this little road to get sorted. So thanks for your efforts, Joe, and all this team behind you.
Thank you, Councillor Curnow.
Just to follow on from that, the proverb, the harder the journey, the better the destination.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whether, your hand is raised. Is that for a statement?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'll unraise my hand.
Okay, thank you. Are there further statements at this point? No further statements. We'll put this to the vote now regarding the noting of this report and all its time delays. Oh, yeah, please raise your hand and say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. So moving on. Well done, Joe. Good luck with the getting traffic lights. Moving on with the Kaipara Wharves project update. I'm happy to move this. Councillor Vincent seconding this. Thank you. Joe.
Thank you. So Pahi Wharf works are well and truly underway on this project now, with the gangway build in progress, and 3 rappels were actually driven in the last couple of weeks. You'll see in the report some very stormy looking pictures of Pahi Wharf to demonstrate the environment, and the work's being progressed as well. There is Bellingham's, who are Auckland based, as mentioned before, who are doing the actual pontoon itself for Pahi Wharf. So they now have a final design which has been progressed, and moulding has begun in their yard in Auckland. So really fortunate that they've been able to get out under the level 3 conditions in Auckland and have this work start. It's on task to be completed. We're actually targeting mid-December for Pahi Wharf, and I think I may have mentioned this in last month's committee as well, that is the aspiration that the contractors and the project manager are working to. The communications team are across this as well, and they've been given thought as to just who and how we can get someone out to support an opening event as well at the Pahi Wharf. The target date currently being 17th of December, so watch this space. Regarding Poto Wharf, design is now underway with STF, and we are on track to complete as per the schedule, so by June 2022. The only further update which you won't see in this report is earlier last week, I unfortunately received a resignation from Jagdeep Singh, who is the project manager on Wharfs currently. Jagdeep has been an absolute asset to the team and has done added so much value as far as getting both Pahi and Poto into a more palatable space, and resolving some of the long-standing issues that we'd had on the projects. So a real loss for Kaipara. Unfortunately, it's his work-life balance. He lives in South Auckland, and the commute is, as you can imagine, just that bit too much, especially in COVID times. So we will be looking to resource a new project manager for the Wharfs project, just for your awareness.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for that report and that update. That's disappointing about Jagdeep, but wishing him well. The questions for clarification, Councillor Whether.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on the Poto Wharf, Joe, relating to the boardwalk, which I think a lot of us thought was originally included in the original quote, but you say that you're still working with the contractor to try and achieve a suitable outcome within budget. Have you made any progress since the time this report was written?
Yes, actually, and apologies, I'd meant to mention that in my update. So we have had a variation quoted from STF regarding that additional piece of work. We are also going out to another contractor to gain their quotation and just solicit some competitiveness in it also. So I'd rather not share the pricing exactly of that quotation, but we are progressing it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just following on the initially the Poto story, that very thing that Councillor Wethy raised. I think on a previous occasion I've raised the suggestion of seeing what can be done with local resources in terms of labour, that even in a voluntary capacity, how much could be done with the resources available within the community, and maybe it's just a matter of the contract supplies materials. Maybe I just wonder if that's been pursued at all, and then I have a follow-up question about pay. So if you want to.
Yes, and apologies for not addressing it more directly, because you did raise that question last month, Councillor. I took it away and the project manager discussed it with the Wharfs Advisory Group, which has representatives from both local communities. And the resolution was that there was not any works that were suitable for a local volunteer group or local resource to support the construction of the wharfs themselves. I like to believe there would be a future opportunity around complements to the space that can be done possibly through the local school or local groups, you know, as far as plantation or anything like that goes. But at this point in time, it wouldn't be a suitable site to bring volunteers into, just due to the specialised nature of the works and the high risk as well.
Okay, because I suppose partly I had in mind, I don't know if you'd be able to get the Mangawhai Tracks Trust on the job, because having recently seen the fantastic job they did with the Back Bay boardwalk over mudflats, I don't think you'd have it'd be more hazardous necessarily at Poto. Maybe it would be. Anyway, so that was just a thought, just to see what's available within the community to be able to advance that. So, okay, so you've answered that question. The other question regarding pay, no, it's actually more a comment. Just having been down there and seen it myself, you're confident about sufficiency of materials, just with a casual chat with one of the chaps working on the job, and I didn't identify myself as to who I was. He was more optimistic that probably they would, rather than that they actually had it nailed. That's all, so to speak. So hopefully you have, or the contractor has indeed got all the resources.
Yeah, I wouldn't know the individual whom you spoke directly with, but the feedback we are receiving from our contractors that they are confident that they have the materials required to complete the job. Yeah.
Should be able to drive a truck along the wharf when they're finished.
I don't know if we're encouraging that.
It's enabling it. Anyway, all good. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? Just a question from me regarding the opening event, December 17. That's Christmas week. Like, it's a truly crazy time. That would be extraordinary to have an opening event then. Noting that you've also got the end of January Pahi Regatta could be the official opening event, as in, like, well, the wharf is open, if you like, people could use it, but so has there been consideration for that, to actually have on that event day, you know, at anniversary weekend, the official opening, which is what happened when the original wharf was opened? Sorry.
So yes, and we have Darren, I believe his surname was Shepherd, on the advisory group as well, and he's been quite continuously engaged in this project from a regatta club. What we would do as a bare minimum is we would naturally do a site blessing for reopening of the wharf whenever it is deemed open to the public for use. So just even if it is a smaller low scale event early December before we open it to the public, and then possibly do a more grand event for more media purposes and so on to celebrate it thereafter. So that's something that the team's working through.
Yeah. Okay. Because thank you. It's more likely to be able to get someone big like the Prime Minister to open in that week immediately prior to Waitangi Day, when they are all heading to Waitangi. All the ministers are heading north to Waitangi. Yeah. Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? No further questions. Thank you. So statements. Yes, I'm excited to see the progress. A few months ago, we were told that the Pahi Wharf would not be able to even be opened by potentially by the regatta. Like it would be a February or March opening, and now it's come forward again to December. That's really, really good, and I'm encouraged by that, and also encouraged by the progress regarding the Poto Wharf. But I'm sad to note that the project manager for these wharves, Jagdeep Singh, is resigned from the council. So looking forward to continued momentum in these key projects and deliverables for our community. Yeah, but it's very encouraging right now. Thank you. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I've slid most of my comments in amongst my questions, but I guess I await with bated breath to find out the result of the finalisation of the tender for Poto Wharf. Be really cool if that could carry through with the funding that's available and any contingency allowance. And as far as Pahi Wharf goes, yeah, I'm really keen to see it get to a conclusion before Christmas. That would be absolutely awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Further statements, elected members? No further statements. Thank you. We'll put this to the vote now on the noting of the Wharves report. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. So page 171 of the agenda, Dargaville to Te Kōpuru Stop Bank project update. Now I'm noting this is a new project entering our externally funded projects committee for the first time today. So I'm happy to move this, and Councillor Wilson-Collins seconding this. Thank you. Joe.
Thank you. So yes, as you've quite rightly said, this is a new report to the committee, and this relates to the 3.5 million of funding which MB have recently awarded to enable stop banks to be established between Dargaville and Te Kōpuru. This project is very much in its planning phase. So Jagdeep Singh had been assigned to be the project manager on this and also the next project. So same update as last. We will be looking to review that and assign a new project manager. At this point in time, we're in the process of drafting the project execution plan, which details exactly how the project will be progressed, and also the procurement plan for the project, which will outline just how we'll look to set up the services. Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Wethy and Councillor Lavaris Woodcock, questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Joe, just going back to your report, on the open project risk, you've identified a couple of risks there associated with negotiations about accessing property for these construction works. Now, they've been given a green status, which I guess I would read as that's all been successfully wrapped up, but I'm not sure that's necessarily the case. Is that the right colour status?
For now, it's the right colour status in that there is a plan around it. We have onboarded a new employee to council as a community engagement advisor. So similar to when we brought on board Amanda Bennett for the Kaihub Valley Trail. We brought on a specialist for this project and the next one also. The risk is green because we feel like it needs to be identified that there is a chance of problems arising, challenges arising with the landowner engagement. However, at this point in time, we have no reason to believe that it will derail the project.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's hope it stays green. That's good.
Indeed.
Thank you, Councillor De Lavaris. Woodcock, then Councillor Vincent. Thank you.
I have a series of questions. So the first is the status of the height of the bunds or stop banks built in the 50s. Is there a lower point to these stop banks than there is to Dargaville Township berm and also the wooden wall along River Road? So the height of the stop bank.
So the specific height of the stop banks along the area, that is something that we're looking to have a detailed design carried out to understand exactly that whole section. And then from there, we will determine what areas we want, where it's most appropriate to build up and put in place these new stop banks. So at this point in time, that detailed design has not been completed. And that's something that we'll be looking to procure services for in coming months.
So last time, Joanne, we had this discussion, Councillor Vincent asked about where the stop bank Dargaville to Te Kōpuru would begin and whether it would also encompass Dargaville Township. And at the time, Jim Sefton said he wasn't sure because that scope hadn't been set. But this report talks to private landowners, stop banks. So I'm understanding that it's actually not going to incorporate the township at all. Is that correct?
No, that is not. So the scope remains to still be unset, as Jim had said prior. And the risk there regarding private landowners is a risk acknowledging that that situation may eventuate. It's not to say that all of the stop banks or even any of the stop banks will be done on private land. It's just saying that it's something the project needs to consider.
So isn't it slightly disingenuous to say that it would be a risk of landowners giving access or approval because it amounts to an improvement on their own property? It costs money to maintain?
I, as a project manager, I would always rather call something out as a risk and have it not come about, as opposed to not call it out and have the situation eventuate without me being across it. And that's the approach I try to encourage across the team.
Certainly. And my final question is the rationale at the time for the funding applied for was that the Te Kōpuru stop bank area was also going to be the source for taking water to fill the Tito Tokoro Water Trust water storage facility, and therefore was resilience to ensure that in the winter time when the water's harvested and pumped up to the dam, that the works and associated works and reticulation would be protected. Is that still the rationale for expending $3.5 million of taxpayers' money on this? What is the rationale?
So the rationale and the scope, as it were, set out by the Ministry of Business as per our funding agreement, which is the criteria we need to build this project to, is to upgrade the existing stock bank region to protect that area. That is what is specifically called out by the Ministry of Business, and that is the basis on which this funding has been awarded. What you mentioned there, I believe, is supplementary benefits that may well be achieved by this project, but it is not the primary focus or one of the key deliverables of this project itself.
Oh, thanks. So would it be correct to say then that out of all of Kaipara's many areas that are subject or exposed to flooding and sea level rise, that this particular portion of the stop bank along the Western Wairoa River does it stand out as being lower than other portions? I'm trying to understand why, because there's so many kilometres of stop banks where we're exposed to flooding risk.
The history and the specifics around why exactly Dargaville to Kaipara was elected for this funding application, it's not something I was across at the time, Councillor. I do understand from reading the applications that it was an area identified as high risk due to the gradual deterioration of the stop banks that were already in place. And it was seen as an opportunity where we could get resource onto the ground quite promptly to enable greater infrastructure in that area. I don't know more than that, I'm afraid.
Oh, so thank you for those. I know I can tell that you're struggling to answer, and perhaps when there's a new project manager, that data will come to light, and that would be very good information to have on hand to know for me as a councillor. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent, question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, could I just say, Joe, you are so good. Thank you for your input, as you continue to do. Look, my first thought was, in my questions, it looked like the reports might have been partly the victim of cut and paste, because the first report refers to, on document page 170, second bullet point at the bottom of the page, organised meetings with iwi and drainage board. And I thought, that sounds like Raupo, and someone just cut it across. But then there could be one or more drainage boards within that area, perhaps, between Dargaville and Te Kaipara.
I believe
would they be boards or committees? They might be drainage committees. Yeah.
So firstly, thank you for your compliment. That's very kind. And yes, I believe there are more than one boards. Whether they're boards or committees, I'm not certain, but there's more than one establishment. Yeah.
Now, I wonder if, and those people are a resource that no doubt you can call upon for some local knowledge. I wonder if, in seeing if the work's to be done on private land, anyone has intentions of doing a title search to look for evidence of a compensation certificate, which would give entitlement to the council to go onto the land to carry out works to maintain / upgrade an existing wharf facility. So there may be something recorded on a title, or may not be, but that would be something that I would be doing to be sure of what our position was. Okay, so that's was the two things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there further questions for clarification here? No further questions. Thank you. So opening statements from me. Look, this is very interesting to have this report come onto this project committee for the first time. The elected members, I think, Joe, you've heard from Councillor Lavaris Wilcox her confusion about the genesis of some of this work. I think it would be really important for all of those originating papers to be collated together so that where this work has come from and that funding is made absolutely clear to everybody, so that those decisions that have already been made by the council don't get relitigated as we are moving forward here. It's just so that everyone is very clear about that train and the chain of the process there, about what's already been traversed. And just to Councillor Vincent's point, the drainage districts and their committees all across Kaipara are an extraordinary example of huge public goodwill by private landowners who surrender their land. There is nothing on their titles for stop bank systems. and just provide access in order to allow the stop bank network and drainage districts to be there in place for the good of everybody. And that system has been established for more than 100 years now. So regarding title searches, all those sorts of, if you like, access and compensation issues, it's very challenging, but it's part of the wonderful nature of these kaipara communities, that's part of the responsibility that those individual landowners have for the total well-being of the total community and everyone else as well. That's part of the framework of course who Kaipara people are, and I'm damn proud of that, because it's actually for the betterment of everybody. Without that stop bank, there'd be no road to Poto. And one of the things as well, of course, Aratapu, which is the area that we're talking about here, and Auro, but Aratapu in particular, was, of course, if you know your folklore, was a bit like something out of Paint Your Wagon, i.e. it was a town that was completely created, was larger than Dargaville, was larger than Te Kopuru, and then all of it got dismantled and shipped away on barges during the height of the kauri industry, or after the kauri milling industry. And that is really important, the area of that we're talking about here, because it was on the river then and it's still absolutely on the river now. But these stop banks for Aratapu and Aroa are very, very key for whatever's going to be happening for the future, and so that Te Kopuru doesn't just become an island, among other things. But thanks, Joe, for bringing this project through to this committee, and looking forward to seeing further development here, noting that Jagdeep is also the project manager here, so needing a new project manager pronto for this work as well. The tide is coming in. Kia ora. Councillor Wilson-Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not much more to add, just excited to see the project on our reports now and looking forward to what's to come. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there further statements? Councillor Lavaris Woodcock.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My statement is against this noting of this report, and the reasons why I'm against this is because the Mayor has mentioned that in a flood event without the stop banks, Te Kopuru would be an island and that area would be underwater between Dargaville, encompassing Notorious West Road and Aratapu. And indeed, Te Kopuru would be an island, but Dargaville would also be completely underwater. Well, not completely, I should be very careful, but I'm aware that on River Road there's a very small, what would it be called, a board retaining wall, and that's all there is. And so my job as an elected member is to uphold principles of accountability and democratic process and transparency. And I'm not comforted by the process by which $3.5 million has been put forward to do this particular section of stop bank improvements. It is good that it will be done, but the process behind selecting this particular section when we have so many other areas, and I've mentioned Dargaville Township as one, that lack protection from flooding, it doesn't seem that the criteria were set to achieve the values of fairness. And it's very important that fairness is considered in council decision making where funding, whether it come from the ratepayer dollar or external funding, it's very important that local government gets it right.
Thank you. Are there further statements? Okay, thank you. Extra closing statement from me. Of course, there is an additional project which has been established regarding the stop banks in Dargaville, to which Councillor Lavaris has directed her questions about what is council doing there. And so that project is running separately from this particular project. And there is money put aside for that as well. And so that project is running separate to this one. So no one is being left behind in this important work, but we have this project to be managing here. So with that, I'm going to put this to the vote now regarding the noting of this report. All those in favour, please raise their hand and say aye. Aye. Against?
Against.
Against.
Could I please have my vote against recorded?
Certainly, Councillor Lavaris Woodcock, your vote against will be recorded here. But that is carried. That item is carried. Thank you. That is noted. So moving on to page number 177 of the agenda, the Raupo, or 173, sorry, the Raupo Upgrade Stop Bank Project update. And so again, this is looking very similar to the last one. The last one, I'm happy to move the noting of this report and seeking a seconder for that. Councillor Vincent, thank you. Joe.
Thank you. Firstly, to acknowledge there is a typo in the top title of this report, where it says the Raupo Upgrade Stop Bank Project. The word stop bank should be removed. It is just simply the Raupo Upgrades Project. So apologies for that, and that will be rectified in future reports, just for clarity. As you mentioned, Your Worship, the report is starkly similar to the previous one, and that is due to this project also being in that early planning phase, where the project has only really kicked off in these past few weeks. So we're in that stage of defining what our procurement strategy will look like, and again developing the project execution plan for this project also. So this one relates to the 2.5 million which was awarded from MB again just recently to support the installation of a gate on the canal at Rurawai to help with the floodgate management. Nothing further to add on this report. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Question from me here: is the community engagement advisor recruited to support this project? Can you speak more to that role and how that person is integrating with the council committee, the Raupo Drainage Committee?
Absolutely. So we have recruited, and she has just recently joined council in this past week, a lady called Nari Rolliston, as a community engagement advisor, and she will be across both of these projects, given the similarities in stakeholders, and a lot of them are shared groups. She is in her induction phase with council, and so at this point in time meeting key internal stakeholders and learning more about both of these projects herself. She herself comes from a teaching background, and it was both the communications manager, Gillian, and myself who were across the recruitment process and felt that she was a really positive fit for the project, and also being local within the Kaipara as well, and really passionate around the developments.
Excellent. That's very clear. Thank you. Councillor Lavaris Woodcock, question, then Councillor Vincent.
Yes. So Joanne, I know that you're new to this project and the other one because they didn't come to you as the program externally funded projects until of late. But the genesis of this project, as far as I understand it, came from the Raupo Drainage Committee and a landowner who had an idea of storing water for irrigation purposes. So can Can you explain about the use of a floodgate and what is its purpose, please?
I cannot do that justice, to be quite honest, Councillor. I just for clarity, my role, I'll be blunt, starts and ends around the project delivery of these pieces of work. We have a separate project planning team who are across whether it be funding applications or setting the scope and deliverables around projects. They then get handed across to my area and we deliver it. And so whilst we will look to understand the scope and define it, the technicalities as to why a gate versus something else, that sits in the planning space to understand.
So on that note, as the project delivery manager, where is the information that should be shared with you and the council to give effect to this project? Sorry, there's talking in the background.
Sorry, so thank you, Councillor Lavaris. We'll bring in Sue Davidson here, the General Manager for Infrastructure, who's also was involved in the briefing paper that went to the entire council within the last couple of months that updated everybody on all of the genesis for this work, including the fact that it's not a water storage project, but it's actually a saltwater exclusion project. But Sue Davidson, if you could just bring us up to speed. Thank you.
Sorry, no, look, I can't. All I was going to say is, look, what we'll undertake to do is by the next meeting, be able to update you. So I haven't been involved. Obviously, we've got new staff involved. We don't understand the scope at this point in time.
Sorry, can I add a complimentary note to that? Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. Just to be really clear, the scope of the project is what is set by the funding agreement between ourselves and the Ministry of Business, and that is detailed at a high level in the project background section of this report. So that is the scope which has been agreed to by our external funders and was supported by Council. And so that is what we are looking to implement as a project. The background and history behind that rationale in the application, I think that's something that there seems to be a desire for more knowledge on, which absolutely we can try and share. But the scope itself is set with MB.
Okay, thank you. Absolutely a desire for as much knowledge as possible. That's what we need as decision makers. So one simple question that you should be able to answer is this proposed flood bank, is the replacing an existing flood sluice
No,
gate?
it is not. It is a new gate.
Entirely?
Yes.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. No further questions.
Councillor Vincent, please. Question for clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In statements time, we can probably shed some more light on Councillor Lavaris Wilcox uncertainty or I have a fairly clear picture in my head, but my question for now though is at this stage of the proceeding, we know how much money is available, but is it correct, Joe, that we don't know in terms of the project costs how much of that budget's going to need to be consumed to build this new floodgate?
That would be relatively fair to say. With it still being in the planning phase of a project, budgets are very much estimates at this point. So yeah, until we've gone through our procurement process and understood what the actual cost of services will be, then yes, there's always going to be that level of risk. But we believe that the budget is reasonably set for the work we're looking to do.
Yep. So in terms of the sort of a cost, might be out of the scope of your role, the cost benefit analysis type thing, would they have included the benefit of eliminating the need to maintain a bit over half the existing stop bank network as a result of installing this gate?
From memory, I don't believe operational costs were taken into account in the funding application as a benefit, as you would say. I don't remember reading that at any point in the materials.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification here? Councillor Lavaris Woodcock.
So if it's a new floodgate, Joe, and I'm not making your life difficult deliberately, but is it to keep the salt water out? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so is the salt water coming into those canals already?
Yes.
How does the salt water come into those canals when the tide is full?
I would assume as much, yes.
Okay, and so is there water going to be, fresh water going to be remaining in the canal when the floodgate is closed? No. So it's an entirely different project and goal. What is the project goal? That is my question. What is the project sluicegate floodgate goal to achieve?
The purpose of it is to achieve greater resilience with rising water levels and at periods of high tide to avoid that infiltration of salt water into that area.
So how is the salt water getting in if there's no floodgate there?
Sorry, can I just make a statement? So we've had a council briefing on this and they've gone through it in great detail. At present, Councillor Lavaris Woodcock, the Raupo Drainage District has 70 kilometres of saltwater facing stop banks that go right into the hills. So the salt water right to the foot of the hills, both sides. This stop bank project, what it will, this floodgate development project is proposed to reduce the saltwater facing stop bank of the Raupo district from 70 kilometres to 30.
Actually, I think, Mr. Mayor, you might have left out a word or two there in your explanation. Like the stop banks follow a major watercourse, like a canal, all the way up to the base of the hills, as the Mayor has said. So what the stop bank will do will cut across the mouth of that major canal so that inside it, there will only be fresh water to worry about, which can discharge at low tide, courtesy of the floodgate opening with the pressure behind it when the pressure of the water on the outgoing tide is less. So what it means is that there'll be a whole lot less stop bank to maintain to keep at a level above the rising sea levels because of that floodgate structure going across. I'm waving my hands about here, you can't see, going across the mouth of this major canal. So it does, that's how, because it had been a mystery to me till I went along to a public meeting where it was explained and people had a chance to express their concerns and so on. It became clear to me why that would be a worthwhile investment, to be fair. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vincent. That's very helpful.
Thank you. And I think that this item was at a public excluded council briefing in March. So elected members should be across that. And why it was public excluded was because it was prior to the confirmation of that contract arrangement. Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Vincent, question for clarification. Your hand is up. No further questions? Thank you. Thank you. No further questions here. Thank you, Joe. So look, statements on this. Sorry if I'm seeming frustrated here. This council has exercised a lot of time discussing the genesis of this project. It is about excluding salt water from one of the canals of the two canals on the Raupo Drainage District. The focus of this work has always been about that, and any secondary benefits of there being water storage were discussed, and frankly are a very, very unlikely eventuality from anything to do with this project. This project is about reducing the many kilometres of saltwater facing stock banks in this space and significantly shifting the debt burden on future communities in Kaipara. As has been discussed before, this was the the project came through the Raupo Drainage Committee, which is an important committee of this council, which had originally, of course, been the Raupo Drainage Board. And one of those board members who started on that committee 4 decades ago, this was his idea. And Ken Whitehead has long carried that idea, and he only retired from being on that committee within the last 18 months in his 80s. And so the long local engineering knowledge of saying, here's a simple approach to fixing a very significant problem has been well known and canvassed locally before. So it's very important and constructive that this project is coming through now for this externally funded projects committee here of this council, and I'm looking forward to the project manager, a new project manager being established here, but I'm also looking forward to meeting Nairi Rolliston, who's going to be working alongside our community in this important work. So thank you, Joe, for what's going on here, and elected members, you may want to go back to refresh yourself with the paper that was written for, I believe, the March briefing. And so there is certainly work being done here before. Thank you. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've given a pretty good old thrash out, but I'll repeat the comment that I made in relation to the Dargawal stock bank issue, because back in the deep dark past, when I was taking the minutes for the Raupo Drainage Board, there was at least one occasion when I was instrumental in the registration of compensation certificates on affected titles where a new drain was constructed, and it seemed like the board in those days was very familiar with the process. It wasn't something that they were doing for the first time, so it may well be that there will be something documented, if it is necessary to go onto private land, that it will be recorded by some sort of a memorial on the titles of the land concerned. So I'd certainly encourage that. Otherwise, yep, I look forward to the next instalment when we see just how much this project is going to cost to put into reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Further statements, elected members. Councillor Lavaris Woodcock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, once again, I will speak against this noting of this report. And the reasons I do this, I speak against are the following. So in our annual report, the advice from the auditor was that as a council, it was required of us to scrutinise carefully the unfolding and the execution of externally funded projects. And I'm not comforted by the lack of information. There is a lack of information which has been evident from the number of questions and confusion I have about this project. But also I'm in principle voting against the adoption of noting this report, because I do so to signal to this council that we have a job to ask difficult questions. And that was recommended by the Auditor General when they did an investigation into the woeful saga, which was the poor handling of the infrastructure requirements for Mangawhai as a developing town for waste water. And so the Auditor General recommended to Kaipara Council that future councillors had the courage to ask difficult questions and the conviction to state strongly where they feel that good governance is, I won't say lacking, but where they feel that something is left to be desired for improvement. So my voting against is a signal that when these items about resilience to climate, which are absolutely the most crucial aspects of governance for Kaipara District, when they come to this committee, can they be furnished with the full complement of information that is available, that went to MB, that went to the Provincial Regional Infrastructure Development Fund, that helped those decision makers grant approval for these funds, for this $2.5 million and this $3.5 million. That's the sort of information that needs to come to the Externally Funded Projects Committee each and every time, so that we have that there to follow and to do our job of tracking these projects through to completion. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further statements? Okay, thank you. Just closing statement from me. All of the matters which Councillor Lavaris Woodcock has raised are very, very important regarding governance. I would say that it's also very important that the council doesn't relitigate decisions it's already made and matters it's already traversed. And so the important thing is, if there are gaps in the knowledge of elected members about what is going on here, it is up to those elected members to ask the questions and to go back and to find them and find the information, because all of the information is captured as best can be known regarding the many important aspects of governance here. And so the genesis of this project, as I've said, has come through one of the committees of the council. This council has accepted those and received the minutes of those meetings, the reports, the paper trail of all of that is absolutely captured. So it's important, and every step of that process has been absolutely clear and clearly documented and reported to this council. So as I repeat myself, if elected members are uncertain of that, then perhaps the officers can go back and put together a paper trail on exactly, again, where all these things are, so that elected members are clear on this, because there are no gaps in the knowledge about this work. There is still work ahead, and there are still many unknowns in this project ahead. So the important thing is that the genesis of all of this is already well captured, and that moment and the decision of the council is already clear and resolved in this space. So we're not relitigating any of that, and we are moving forward. So at this point, I'm putting this to the vote now. So all those in favour of noting this report, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. And against?
Against.
So that is carried. That item is carried. Thank you. So we're moving on now to the externally funded projects overview, the financial overview. And Councillor Wilson-Collins is moving the noting of this and seeking a seconder for this. Councillor Vincent, thank you. Joe.
Thank you. So you'll notice this report now includes the details of both Dargaville to Te Koporo Stop Bank and the Raupo upgrade project. One key piece of information I'd like to draw your attention to is the final column surrounding claimed, the total subsidy claimed from MB to date, and the significant uplift we've had in the past month in that column. It now sitting just over 12 million being claimed. Previously it was around about 7. So it's a nice way to reflect the progress that's happening on these projects, and the healthy relationship happening with our funding agreements. Other than that, nothing further to add, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for clarification? No questions for clarification. All right, thank you. Simple. Councillor Wilson-Collins, statement.
Nothing much to add here. This mostly is in the other reports, a lot of this information, but thanks for pointing out those aspects of it, and thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there from Councillor Vincent a statement?
Wrong mouse. No, I have nothing to add. I think it's really cool having the information presented, the summary, all in one place, so we can spot the trends. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further statements on this financial report?
Yes.
Councillor Lavaris Woodcock.
For me, it's most helpful the percentage of expenditure to date, which is a very easy way of tracking these projects' execution. So, yeah, it's great and it's very clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there further statements? No further statements. All right. Thank you, Councillor Wilson-Collins.
Nothing further to add.
Okay, thank you. We're putting this to the vote now on the noting of this report. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to the final item for today, the program update. I'm happy to move this, and I'm seeking a second here. Councillor Withy, thank you. Joe, sorry.
Thank you. And so again, just to point out that we have these 2 new projects now added to the programme overview. We have changed the order of the reports to align to this programme overview as requested last month by, I think it was yourself, Councillor Vincent, with the exception of Kai Water, which we felt was best to move to the start of the programme today, given Vaughan Cooper was attending from Northland Inc. So just to acknowledge that slight change. Other than that, nothing further to add on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Withy, question for clarification.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Joe, just are you amending the opening events to take into account any potential slide that's occurring in these projects? I've just noticed that a lot of the end dates or the opening dates, etc., at the end of the programs are pretty much staying the same, and yet some of the projects have had either slippage, either out or in. So what's the stage? Are you actually keeping these as best you can with the information available at the realistic, up-to-date format?
We are. If I use Kaihub Valley Trail as an example, so there's been plenty slippage happen on that project, unfortunately, to date. The overall programme, however, has allowed for it. And so that overall completion date and the opening event date has not moved. What we typically do is we allow a 1-month buffer between the completion and the opening event date, and you should see that quite consistently through the report. to allow for a marginal amount of slippage. But yes, it is something that we keep tabs on. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification here? No further questions. Thank you. Statements here. Statement from me. Look, it's wonderful to see opening events and, if you like, conclusions of these projects are starting to loom closer now, and the ends of this work. This is, you know, it's wonderful to see a very busy range of projects in one place, and you know, this calls into a good light, if you like, the important work of the council as a whole in setting up this committee and the externally funded projects into this approach that brings everything together, because you've got all the additional business as usual sort of work going on, but this special externally funded work is extraordinary stuff, and for this to be resolving in the period that we're in is really, really key, and we're seeing a pattern here. A key comment that I would have would be that the if you say Labour weekend October 2022 regarding an opening event for phase 2 of your Mangawhai shared path, possibly none of the current councillors will be councillors by Labour weekend, so we might all get voted out. So that's just something that in the world of democracy, I just kind of put that into the mix. So if that could be brought forward, but also to outside the election period, that would be an interesting and nice thing for the current crop of councillors, rather than future councillors being part of that event only. Yeah. But this is wonderful to see the pattern here. Thank you. Kia ora, Councillor Weddy.
No, I have no further comments, thank you, but I do share your sentiment about that particular one, because it's been such a significant project for the communities of Mangawhai. It'd be nice to have it wrapped up during this term of this council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, just an overall comment on the thing. It's a sea of green. Like it's there's only what 3 orange lights, and all the rest are saying it's all go for gold. So yeah, I think that's that, because it's another convenient way of just for a quick overview of the whole how things are headed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there further statements?
Yes.
Councillor Lavaris Woodcock.
I'd like to commend Joanne on your execution and delivery of the project management side. I've actually been a project manager, and I know it's a very hard job. And so thank you very much for joining Kaipara Council and giving it your absolutely wonderful expertise. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Further statements? Any further statements? Councillor Wilson Collins.
Thank you. Just to reiterate the thanks to Joe. These are long slogs for you. It's not like a normal council meeting where we have different presenters. So yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for the good reporting. And yeah, let's see what the next month brings.
Yeah. Yep. Fair enough. Right. Okay. Yes, thank you, Joe. Yes, these are absolutely a marathon, but it's really very, very clear, and it's very good to have this all in one place. This whole initiative is really, really helpful for us and for our community. So, so on that note, this brings us to the end of this item. So we're going to put this to the vote now. So the noting of the overall program update. All those in favour of noting this report, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. So that item is carried. So that brings us to the end of our agenda for today. And it's been a long but very fruitful meeting. Thank you. And we've covered a lot of ground. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to the public who stayed with us through this, but a lot of great content here. And at this point, again, thanks to Joe, thanks to the team, Tracy for the IT support and your fire alarm going off in the middle and so on, and to our general managers who Sue Davidson and Jason Maris who've joined us today as well. So thank you to all the team and the elected members for staying the course, and we managed to get through with a quorum just. So noting that as we conclude this meeting, there are 4 elected members not present. So we just scraped through with a quorum. So at this point, I'm going to close the meeting now with a karakia, and thank you all again. Kia tau na kitanga ati mea ngaro, ki runga ki teina a tātou, kia mahia te hua makihikihi. Kia toi te kupu, toi te mana, toi te aroha, toi te reo Māori, tihei Māori ora. I te ano. See you again, everybody. Stay well. Noho ora mai.